I'm so excited to speak to our guest today. She is a registered practical nurse in Ontario, and she also does cosmetic tattooing. Please help me to introduce Nurse Cendi.
Hello, Jonathan. How are you?
Good, good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Hi, my name is Jonathan McLean, and I'm the founder and CEO of McLean Aesthetics.
Welcome to the dark side.
Let's go. I'm so excited to speak to you today because you're the first nurse that's from out of sea, overseas that are going to be speaking to me. So I'm super excited about that.
Yay.
Awesome. So let's hop into it. So Cendi, tell the audience where you're currently located right now.
So I am in Whitby, Ontario. I'm around like 45 minutes east of Toronto. I think most of the time when people think of Canada, they definitely, Toronto's definitely on the map and well known. So yeah, it's a little suburb area, which is really nice. I've been in this region for like the last 20 years now. So I love it. It's close enough to Toronto that you get the city life, but far enough that you can kind of, keep it quiet when you need to.
Yeah, that has to be amazing. And Toronto is a very live city, so I'm sure there's
Yes.
a lot to do. Tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about the aesthetic industry in that city. Now I'm in South Florida, so it's like booming here. How is it over there?
Right. It's the same, especially in Toronto. It is booming, like all the services that you can think of. Everyone's starting to look into it. I would say in the suburbs, it's starting to get to that point as well. I would say it's not as quickly as Toronto, so there's a lot, that we're kind of learning from there. But it is definitely booming. Like it's one of those things where a lot of people that you will speak to now, you would never even know that they've even had any type of procedure. And now it's getting to the point where it's not as taboo as it was. But we're getting there. I think it's definitely a little different here in Canada than it is probably in the States. So
Yeah, definitely,
yeah.
definitely. Now I understand you guys have like universal healthcare. This doesn't cover any of that, right?
Oh no. No. I mean, if you're getting your lips done, you're on your own, right? So yeah, there's certain procedures, for example, like migraine treatment with botox that insurance companies will cover depending on the situation. But yeah, for the most part, yeah, you're on your own. Yeah.
Now you are RPN, and
Yes.
in Ontario, if we like kind of equate that in America or United States, it's like an LPN. Now
Exactly.
LPNs can't really inject in United States. Tell us a little bit about the laws over there and kind of how that works.
Yeah, of course. So that's a great question, actually, because what ends up happening is if you are an RPN or an RN, the only way really that you can inject is with a medical director, who essentially you're reporting to. So what's happening now, I know back in the day, if you weren't physically in the clinic with them, you couldn't inject. Now you're able to. The only difference is with every patient I have to have a consult with my nurse practitioner. So whether it's a nurse practitioner or an actual MD, as long as they are the ones who are, essentially making that prescription in that order, then you're able to inject. So the training is all done with nurse practitioners and doctors. So we're essentially not on our own. And at the end of the day, if you are not a nurse practitioner yourself, you really should not be injecting without a consult with one. So what I do is we have them usually on a Zoom call, actually. So my patients will always talk to her in a consult on a Zoom call. And all of that interaction is done essentially in a virtual manner. Whereas I think up until a few years ago, you had to physically be in the clinic with them. So a lot's changed. The virtual world is definitely opening us up to much more. I mean, we're able to do this because of the virtual world. So that's nice. But yeah, that's essentially how it works. You have to have a medical director that you're working with.
Super cool, super cool.
Yeah.
So let's go all the way back to the beginning. How did you get started in this industry? And what made you want to enter this industry?
I will be completely honest. I didn't wake up and ever think like, oh, I want to start injecting. I actually was pretty foreign to it. And I kind of, I was never really opposed to it, but it wasn't quite my thing. So I would say it's more so the permanent makeup world. So I've been doing that now for like 4 years, and it got to the point where I would say 9 out of 10 of my clients would ask me, oh, if you're a nurse, like, do you do injections? And I was like, no, I don't. Why not? And then gradually it just got to the point where I was like, okay, they're obviously asking for a reason. There's obviously a market out there. So that's honestly the only reason I kind of explored it. And then as I started to explore it, I really just kind of looked at it and thought, you know what, I could definitely do it in a way that holds value to me, because I didn't know enough about it to really feel confident enough that it was something I wanted to do. And then once I explored it, yeah, the rest is history. Like I didn't realize I'd like it as much as I do. But yeah, that's more or less how it was. It was my clients kind of wondering why I wasn't looking into that option. So almost fell into my lap in a sense, like not something I woke up and, just decided this was my dream job. Definitely not, nothing like that.
And that's very interesting. I always like to ask that question because it's, so many people have different reasons why they get into the industry, but I've never met a provider that actually does cosmetic tattooing. How did you get into that industry also?
So for that, I actually was a client first. Like I would say 11 years ago, I got my eyebrows done. I got microblading, and I was kind of always like obsessed with my brows. I'm that girl, like I could do nothing to my face, but if I don't have eyebrows, it's over. Like I'm not leaving the house without them. So I kind of just dove into that and started thinking I could do this. This is something I, value in the sense that it changed my life drastically. I know that sounds pretty dramatic, probably especially for a male to be like, oh, eyebrows, it's just eyebrows. Well, I was taking so much time drawing them every morning. I've got 3 kids at home. So like with one kid, it was not as bad, you take time. Second kid, it was like, okay, now I've got one like tugging at me while I'm getting ready. And then the third time around, it was like, okay, if I don't do something to kind of save myself time and money, then it's just, it's more of an irritant in the morning to have to do that. And then I started thinking, there's options to having it done so that when they heal, they still look fairly natural. Like my eyebrows are done. I have powder brows. But back then, your thought was always, if you got your eyebrows done, eyebrow tattoo essentially, that it never looked natural. It almost looked, obviously fake. The color was not good. So I started out really because I was a client and I just felt like there was a need. And I also have I've always had an artistic eye, but never quite knew what to do with it. Like I don't really have the patience to sit there and draw. I used to back in the day when I was younger, but I kind of lost that. So I was looking for an outlet to kind of combine my artistic aspect. And also at that time, I was still like I said, I'm a nurse, but my background is palliative nursing, which is like totally left field when it comes to what I'm doing. But it was just more the interaction with people and families, and then just kind of combining all that together. So yeah, I don't know, it just kind of unfolded on its own. None of it was really anything I had always looked into. So when you hear of those people saying, oh, it was my dream job, no, it never was something I thought to do until I actually started doing it and realized I actually loved it. So
yeah, but when you exactly a good point that you said is the personal experience that you drew upon, and that's how you kind of got in the industry. And I feel like that passion, because you know how it feels when you're treating other people, you're gonna have so much more empathy. So
for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And then I also want to say, your eyebrows do look very natural. I didn't know those.
Thank you.
They look very natural.
Yeah, they're definitely there's hair there, obviously, but most of it is not hair.
For sure. How did you land your first job in this industry?
That's a good question. So let me think back. I actually started doing it from like a home studio.
Yeah.
I actually took it upon myself to get into a tattoo shop, believe it or not, because I also have a lot of tattoos. And I found someone who was doing permanent makeup, but her husband was a tattoo artist. So that's essentially how I started, was working there for, I think it was around 6 months, and just kind of getting to know the industry and getting to know, the clients. But I very quickly realized like a lot of it too is just the experience they have with you, whether it be what you could call bedside manner, and just kind of connecting with them and realizing, why they're coming to you. And then once COVID hit, I actually did pretty much all of my work in my home studio, because I had no choice, right? Like I was shut down for so long. So when we did finally open, to be able to do it in a way where I didn't have to worry about overhead, and I felt safe enough knowing that it was just myself and my client. We renovated the house, blocked it off so that, the kids and dogs couldn't come through where the studio was. And then I just built my clientele that way. And now I'm lucky enough that I am in a space where I'm renting a room, and I've got, great set of colleagues, and it's other services like lashes, nails, facials, waxing. So I'm in an environment where I've got that motivation and that drive because of the team that I'm now working alongside. But it really was just looking around and seeing, okay, who would I want to learn from? And I think the only reason I kind of went into the tattoo shop at that sense was because I wanted to kind of dive into something that was a little like an environment that was a little less clinical. I didn't want it to be like a spa or like a medi spa or anything like that, just because I wanted to get comfortable with myself first and the art and the skill and technique before I went into another space where I felt like I wasn't, I didn't quite fit in, I guess you could say. I don't know. I'm pretty laid back. I'm pretty, like I guess you could say I'm not your typical injector in that sense. Like I'm pretty boring. I don't have any, that's just how I am. I'm pretty like down to earth in that sense. So I wanted an environment where I felt a little bit more, like, I guess it would be less intimidating for me to do an environment where I was familiar with, I guess you could say.
How did you become so comfortable with like picking up a needle? And because it's a hard job. It's not like easy, like, oh, I'm just going to do this one day. How did you become so comfortable with that?
You know what? This again is going to be a little odd because it is so different from what I do. I honestly feel as though my experience in palliative and complex nursing helps me become comfortable with patients in general. So for example, obviously with palliative, you're dealing not only with the patient, like during end of life, but it's a lot of family members. And with that comes a lot of pressure in like how you are with your bedside manner. And I do feel that if I didn't have that experience as a bedside nurse, I wouldn't be able to quite connect with the client and quite understand what they were there for. So with the needle, a lot of it, honestly, any training I did, I was usually that keener that would be like, oh, I want to inject first. Or I want to, get the feel for how it feels in my hands. And just, I would say a lot of the confidence came from getting feedback from those, like, first, I would say even 10 clients, and then just making it a habit to not only ask for feedback, but, potentially ask for reviews so that I knew exactly what they liked about it, what I could improve on. And just getting that like brutal, honest, constructive criticism from all my clients, and then realizing, okay, this is what I did well. This is what made them comfortable. I just always took the opportunity again, like in a training environment to, when they asked like who wants to try it first, I usually was that one that was like, okay, let me dive in there because now I have the opportunity to do it while I have a trainer like right by my side.
Okay,
so,
yeah. No, I can definitely.
I mean, there's still days.
Yeah.
There's still days where you're not as confident, or you have a case where you're looking at a set of lips and you're already realizing it's going to be a bit more of a challenge, and that's fine. I think the more you really do it and just getting more models and getting more people, to come in, the better, or the more confident you get with it.
So practice and confidence.
Yes, exactly.
What procedures are trending right now in your area? Like what procedures are clients asking for?
By far lips.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, I actually right now am specializing in lips and Botox. I actually don't quite have the desire to do everything, which can be challenging because I know, and you understand this. When it comes to aesthetics, it is not just focused on one area. It's the whole picture, which I obviously can understand and appreciate. But if I were asked to do lips 24/7, that would be my, like, there's no, like, that is what I have very quickly learned that I love to do. But yeah, definitely lips is like the number one thing. And especially depending on the market and the demographic. But yeah, most of the girls I would say are definitely asking for lips.
Yeah, and I mean, like, why not? I know it is facial balancing, like you said, but
Right,
I feel like if you're really good at one service, people will come and see you just for that one service.
Yeah, and that's what I'm always feared of. Like, I kind of felt like I'm already doing the permanent makeup. Now that I'm doing injecting, I kind of fell into an area, and I'm just getting out of that where I don't want to be, I guess that term of like, jack of all trades, master of none. Like, I just felt that if lips are kind of the thing that I like to do and I want to continue training and educating in that, then, why not? So.
Yeah, no, I can definitely understand that. Definitely
understand.
Yeah. Have you tried like the lip flip or the Russian lip?
Yeah. So I have done lip flips. I don't know. They're effective, obviously, but I wouldn't say they're my number. They're not my favorite. I don't think they're as effective as most people hope. Russian lips, I personally haven't trained in that. And I, to be honest, don't have much of a desire because I'm sure you've noticed in a lot of my work, I'm trying to really aim for the subtle lip filler, the ones that are really just catered and designed specifically for the client. I want it so that my profile isn't just, when you look at it, they're all the same type of lip. And sometimes the Russian lips, although they're beautiful and, to each his own, if that's the look that you're going for, great. I sometimes can see that it can be on the cusp of being a little too much. So I personally don't, but I'm not, like I said, I'm not opposed to it. I would never, necessarily say no, but I still prefer to be a little bit more on the side of gearing towards it being a little bit more natural. Because I do find a lot of the clients that I have, they'll either come because they've got like little to no lips, or, with aging, you start to get the fine lines. So they just want that, that hydration, that hydrated appearance where it just looks more plump and just, an enhanced version of what they already have. Because that's what I always tell my clients is, you can come to me and ask for essentially anything you want. Whether or not I will do that is a different story. And I always educate them on what I feel would best suit them. And unfortunately, I have come into, some situations where I've just flat out had to say no. Because I think that's a huge thing that people forget is that, yes, you're coming to me. Yes, you're the client. Essentially, you're right. But if I do feel that you're already, I guess you could say, overfilled and you've already come to me and there's already too much there, I would rather just call it a day and agree to disagree than have someone walk around potentially either regretting what they've done or, at the end of the day, it's still my work, right? So if I don't personally value it or, believe that that's what I should be doing, then it doesn't matter what amount of money is offered. Like it's just not something I'll do.
Yeah, it's your reputation ultimately,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
You want to put the best version of yourself out, for sure.
Yeah.
How do you get clients nowadays in this era? I've seen like a lot of people use social media, some people word of mouth, some people are newspapers still or magazines. What is the best method that you've used?
I would say majority of mine are definitely word of mouth. They're almost all referrals from other clients I've had. And then social media right now is vital because that's where they're finding me. Essentially what, all they have to do at that point is book a consult. And usually once you've got that consult booked, whether it's virtual or in person, then we can kind of tell right away if we're gonna, mesh well together, if we're not. But I would say word of mouth for sure, because essentially most of my clients have come to me because they've spoken to another one of my clients. And those who haven't, right now I'm kind of taking a tally of what everyone's using. And most of them have either found me on Instagram or on Google. So yeah.
Wow. And that's interesting because Google ads are the number one thing that's trending right now for marketing, and also social media sites like Instagram is the modern day billboard. So
right. And with Google, I think a lot of it has to come to with, I'm huge on asking for the reviews afterwards, even if it means, potentially, little things that they may say I have to do better. But I'm personally one of those people that anything I do, whether it be a trip or a service or even a restaurant, I go to the reviews first. So I do think that has an impact because, the more often I'm asking for those reviews, then those are like personal stories from my clients that will tell you exactly what they liked and what they potentially didn't like. And yeah, I'm okay with that. If there's something I need to work on, I would rather know now than wait until it's too late. And I'm trying to make sure that I'm always taking that feedback to heart and making sure that any little thing that they loved about it, that I'm continuing to do all the time. And anything that could have been better, that I'm making sure to avoid that. So.
For sure, definitely. Now I get a lot of questions from providers. I place providers into med spas, dermatology offices, plastic surgery offices, and they always ask me, like, I get a lot of questions from new providers, like, I'm giving up hope. I haven't found a job, I can't get in there. What is some advice you can give to a new provider that maybe is looking to get into the industry?
I would say just to kind of, just keep going, because there's definitely days even for myself where I'm nowhere near where I want to be when it comes to this. Like, I'm still learning, I'm still building. To kind of keep going and just sticking in your own lane and knowing why you're getting into it. So, for example, like I said, I kind of fell into this by fluke and I realized how much I loved it. But I know personally why I'm doing it and what my goals are for my clients. So sticking to that and making sure like you're not comparing yourself, and that if you're going to get into it, be prepared that you're going to have to continually train and find a mentor, like find someone that you can look up to and say like, okay, this is, the issue I had with these lips, and making sure that no matter what, that you're constantly doing something to better your skill and your technique. Because there's a lot of days where, let's say, if I don't have clients booked, I could, essentially just be, I don't know, surfing on the internet, doing whatever, but I'm trying to make sure that I'm learning things about complications that may happen, different techniques, or even just staying in that mindset of like, okay, this is what I'm here for, and this is what I want to learn. And then networking with like colleagues, right? And finding like-minded people and surrounding yourself with them, because I do find it's very easy to kind of think, a lot of people get into it and they're like, oh, it's the one thing I've always heard, which can be really frustrating. A lot of people who are not in the industry are always like, oh, I know you're probably doing it because it's good money. Well, at the end of the day, like, sure, it can be good money, but that's not what I'm doing it for, like I'm not doing it just for the money. If that were the case, then I think I would have been probably giving up much sooner, because it is hard. Like, you really have to like wake up and think about, what you need to do to grow your business. So just, surrounding yourself with people that are like-minded and will motivate you to continue to learn. My husband and my family are like, in the beginning, especially, the rest of my family, they're not as educated when it comes to injections. It's very taboo for them still. So the fact that they support it and they understand that I'm doing it for the reasons that I'm doing it, that alone is huge. If I didn't have that support system, I can see a lot of new injectors kind of falling out of it very quickly, which is sad. So yeah, I'm grateful for that, because if it wasn't for those people being like, no, continue doing it, you love to do it, you don't have to do everything, then yeah, that's kind of what continues to push me. So, and I do love it. Like, I actually don't feel like I'm working, which is as cheesy as I would, growing up, you always hear that and you're like, well, it's just something your parents say, because no, it's true. Like, I actually, if I were here like 24/7 doing lips, I wouldn't feel like I was working. I would almost feel like I'm, I don't know, not playing, but like, it just, I'm helping people with something that might seem bizarre to most, but yeah, no, I love it.
Yeah. I mean, you found something that you really like. That's amazing. That's how I feel too, honestly.
Right?
Yeah, definitely. So I want to talk to you a little bit about training. I know you mentioned that this career is very hard, and I like how you mentioned that, honestly, because so many people come to me and they're like, I just want to try this out, or I just want to do this one day, or I just want to figure it out. And it, like you said, it's a whole umbrella of things. You got to do the training. You got to constantly think and mentally be there to give the customers the best service. So I want to talk to you about, like, what do you believe is the best type of training to get, and kind of what trainings can you suggest for providers?
So definitely with the training, it has to be obviously multiple days, whether it's like a weekend or a week and whatnot. Training where you have like the actual hands-on experience. I've heard of a lot of training that happens where, you get like a model or two. I was lucky enough that we had 2 full like half days of straight injecting with the trainers. So making sure you've got like a lot of hands-on training during that, obviously, aside from, the actual theory and in class of learning about anatomy and whatnot, but also looking into training that could potentially offer like mentorship day. So I also got really lucky. I trained with Seamless in Stouffville, Ontario, so it's not far from where I am. And they offered an option where you actually had a one-on-one mentorship day. And they basically said, okay, what is it that you want to focus on? And if that's the case, let's get you models for those services specifically. So I right away, it was like definitely lips and, the common areas of Botox. So that, I think it was like a 6 or 7 hour day. But that was all we did. And with that came actual like hands-on experience. And then also reaching out to your nurse colleagues. Like I had some nurse colleagues who are opening up training options. So if they have options of doing like, let's say a beta group of students who will be like the first ones to take training, jumping on that and saying, you know what, I will definitely be willing to train more. And then at that point, you also get further hands-on training. So whether it's a mentor that can, let you shadow and or work alongside them, but that would be key because there's lots of options of saying, oh, I have like 20 certificates. Yeah, that's great. It's obviously great to learn, but unless you've got that like hands-on experience of actually physically doing it, you can take as many certificates and learn by watching. But diving in there and getting your hands on those needles and actually physically doing it as much as you can, I would say that's key, because there are unfortunately a lot of academies that don't offer as much hands-on. And I don't know how people would gain the confidence to do it on their own if they didn't have that. So
yeah, that's good. That's good. How do you view online training by chance? Like if someone wants to go do a training course online, do you think it's still comparable to doing it in person, or would you even suggest people doing it?
Yes and no. I guess it depends on what they're learning, right? So for example, lips, like, yeah, there's definitely a lot of techniques you can learn online, but again, with that, I would say definitely have a component of hands-on regardless, because even with permanent makeup, there's so many online trainings right now. But unless you're getting that hands-on, you're really doing yourself a disservice by not actually getting in there and doing it. So I wouldn't knock it. Like definitely online is vital as well, because you probably have access to much more that way. But it has to be combined with the hands-on for sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
What about conferences? Is there any conferences that you would suggest for providers to go to?
That's a tough question. I was thinking about that, and I personally wouldn't suggest any off top of hand, in the sense that, again, I do think it depends on what you are specializing in. Like if you're someone that's kind of diving into like the full facial balance and doing everything, then yeah, there's so many in Toronto that are offered. There's a lot in the States. I personally, for example, because I want to specialize in lips, there is a conference that's coming up next year, Inner Circle with Julie Horn. But I mean, just looking at it, I'm like, that's like later on when I can actually do it. But I think the reason I say it's hard to answer is because it really all depends on what you want to learn. I personally don't believe that you should be attending any and every conference in the industry just because I do find if it's not kind of focusing on those areas that you really want to like provide a niche in, then you could essentially learn it in different ways. So I don't know. Off top of my head, I couldn't think of any like specifically that I felt comfortable suggesting to people, only because I do think it depends on what those areas are that you're going to specialize in. So that one for me, like, would be a dream. Like if they had, a contest to win that, I would be all over it. But right now, at the point I'm at, I'm probably not going to be attending it anytime soon. But I think that one would be like huge for someone who's, wanting to do lips. But it's not just lips, right? So that's the other thing, is realizing, okay, this is something I would want to learn at, but will it cover those areas that I want to get better on? So yeah, I can't really say off the top of my head of any specific ones that I would think of. There's just so many. Like every day I'm learning about a new one. I'm like, wow, I didn't even know that one existed. So.
And to your point that you were speaking about earlier, Julie Horn, she's a good example of someone that specializes in one thing and capitalizes.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's funny because like right off the bat, I was like, wow, like it is feasible, like she obviously is like a lip queen. And I think, although you can be very, very successful kind of touching base in everything, because injections came secondary for me and I started with the permanent makeup, I do feel like for me personally, I've loved kind of, taking that area and focusing on a market of like niche clients who I can help out. and it's very quickly grown in a point where I'm like, I love doing it. So it was a bonus in that sense.
Is there anybody on Instagram that you would suggest for providers to follow if they're interested in, gaining some more knowledge or seeing what other providers are doing?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously Julie Horn, if you're someone that loves to do lips, Tim Pierce. So he and the thing I like about that is he dives into those complications. So it's the non-glamorous side of aesthetics, because I do feel that unfortunately those type of things are not talked about as often. Like, obviously there's providers on social media that talk about it, but I do like that his focus really is on the complications and what can happen, so that you kind of are in a realistic manner realizing like it's definitely not all glamorous and it's definitely scary. And if you don't have the proper support around you, it can go sour pretty quick. Like, you really have to be prepared for those times. And then along with him, obviously Miranda Pierce, like, I like that she tackles the marketing aspect and how to kind of get you to grow, because I do find, again, with aesthetics, it's all, I mean, at the end of the day, when people see your profile, it's all visual, right? So if you're not able to kind of get yourself out there and market yourself in a certain manner, no one's going to even know you exist. And she's also hilarious. Like, I remember in the beginning, I was like, okay, this is good. And like, it's content that, makes you kind of feel like a real person. It's not so clinical, and it's not, so I would say them, like, so far, I mean, it's hard because I'm trying not to kind of dive too deep into following like too many of the larger like celebrity ones, just because I do find it can get overwhelming, and then it starts to show you a lot of the aspects that maybe I'm not personally interested in yet. So I'm just trying to focus on those things for now. So that's my reason for saying that. But there's, oh my gosh, there's so many of them. It's a lot. And once you kind of start following and looking, you're like, wow, there's a lot out there. So
yes, definitely. Well, thank
and
you.
then Jonathan McLean.
Yes, exactly. Well, thank you, Cendi, so much for sitting down with me and talking more about the aesthetic industry. Tell everybody where they can find you and what you got planned next.
Yeah, for sure. So Instagram, Cendi Micor _Inc. The website's pretty easy. It's cendimicor.com. In terms of what I have next, to be honest, my goal essentially is to obviously have my own place at some point and have like a small team. I don't want to have anything large. I want it to be like an intimate group of people that really have the same interests in mind. So that's where I'm at right now, is kind of continuing to grow and then having, those people grow along with me. So yeah, I don't know exactly where and when, but that's kind of all like what I've been doing in the last couple of weeks is figuring all that out. So
nice, super cool. We have to stay tuned for that, definitely.
Yeah.
And until next time, goodbye.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Bye.